Hello, and welcome to this lab, or actually pre-lab overview for our salivary cortisol levels lab, which is coming up in 2 weeks. Okay, so basically, as you're going to hear in lecture very shortly coming up, cortisol is a corticosteroid, so it is going to be a hormone that is associated with physical and or emotional stress within the body. And we are going to be looking at different levels of cortisol in human subjects, so basically in human classmates that are going to volunteer to collect samples that we're going to be analyzing. Now, in lab number 2, we're going to analyze the circadian expression of cortisol. And so the circadian rhythm, different kind of daily kind of changes in the set points of various factors are going to be discussed within the lecture. Cortisol levels are going to change in a kind of rhythmic pattern in association with kind of the day-light cycle. And so we're going to be testing that hypothesis in the lab. Now, in order to be able to do this, we need to be able to collect salivary samples within the saliva is going to be the cortisol. We are doing this ahead of time so that we were able to run a ELISA, and we'll talk about that when we get to the lab, but we're basically going to run an experiment to measure the amount of cortisol that's present within the sample. I am going to run that outside of the lab and then provide you with the data in which you can analyze. Now, as a preview of this cortisol lab, what we've got over here on the right-hand side of this slide is showing you kind of a standard plasma cortisol level. And so we've got cortisol level within the blood, kind of along the y-axis, time along the x-axis, and what we can see is that the cortisol levels are going to be relatively low at night, and they are going to increase and be relatively high during the day. Now, we are going to test that hypothesis, so we are going to identify volunteers within the lab who are collecting saliva samples, which they're going to drop off in the lab, and then I will run an ELISA on the samples and then give you, in essence, the values that we're going to be taking a look at. Now, the instructions, so each volunteer, and we'll have a number of volunteers in each lab, but each volunteer is going to get 2 tubes with an ID number, as well as one that says AM and one that says PM. AM for the morning, PM for the night, and so you want to do it ideally kind of at night and then the following morning, or potentially in the morning and then at the nighttime. So for the PM sample, the night sample is in the evening. Rinse the mouth out with water, wait about 10 minutes, and then collect the sample in the tube that's provided. And so you're basically going to kind of salivate and drool, in essence, into the test tube. You're going to then seal that tube, put it in the freezer. The following morning, you want to get up, rinse your mouth with water within 20 minutes after waking, wait about 10 minutes, and then do the same thing. Fill the tube up with saliva, cap it, and then freeze the tube. What you're going to want to do is bring those samples into Boyer 204, and so basically, you can't see it here. The door to get into the lab is in this kind of little vestibule here, kind of behind this. But in 204, behind the door is going to be a freezer, and there's going to be a box here that are marked for Biology 206, Human Physiology Cortisol Samples. And so basically, you want to take your sample, put it in the freezer. The door should be unlocked, but if it's not unlocked, check with the student working in the biology office. And so that's it for this cortisol lab preview, pre-lab activity. We're going to ask a few volunteers to take the samples, to collect their samples, and then to return them by the end of the week so that we are going to be able to run the samples next week. As always, your laboratory instructor may have additional updates and details available to you. And then finally, if you have any questions or concerns, please do not reach out to me as lab coordinator or reach out to your laboratory instructor. Thank you and have a great day.